Hey folks, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
And hopefully we have sound, because I did not fully check the sound before we started. It looks like we got sound.
Please let us know in the comments if you're just seeing our mouths move and not hearing anything.
Yeah, I'm sure someone will let us know. So Wizards of the Coast, they've already announced that one of the products that they're going to be coming out with is going to be a nautical themed, right? Yesterday they did on Dragon Talk. They had Jeremy Crawford on. He did a piece, basically an hour segment stuff that was all related to aquatic and underwater combat and all that stuff. So I actually checked it out, wondering if there would be any nuggets in there. Because we did get the nautical part.
Right. Now, I mean, I ran a game when we were doing the fantasy cruise and ran a pirate game, a game on the boat, whatever you want to call it.
Well, Ted, your campaign for
Shut up, Dave Fryan.
So that was something but I mean that was all still surface, but it was on the sea. But when it comes to actually being under the water, that's where things kind of get a little crazy. And literally just before we hit the go button, we were having a conversation that it looks like all the creatures that you would see as under the water, they either have the amphibious trait of being able to breathe air and water, or have the capacity to hold their breath for some amount of time.
Some obnoxious amount of time.
Yeah, some of them were like 15 minutes, some of them for like an hour.
So I guess one of the interesting things that did kind of come up with the Crawford talk on doing things underwater was spellcasting and verbal components. Yes, you can absolutely do that. But Jeremy was kind of like, well, in my game you could do that, but you have to let out your breath to talk underwater. And the suffocation rules are very harsh, which basically if you're not holding your breath, you're suffocating and you just basically start dying, essentially. Right. So I would say, the only thing I would say, any of those creatures you came upon that are kind of aquatic, but in the sense they can hold their breath for a long time, they wouldn't be able to, that might be a limiting factor. If they have breath weapons, they wouldn't be able to use those if they're holding their breath. Now, granted, like you mentioned, the Hydra, not going to matter very much, and probably some other monsters not going to matter very much. But like lizard folk get to hold breath, so if you have a shaman and he's holding his breath underwater, he's going to have to come up. If he casts a spell, and then immediately he'll have to come up for air. Right. One of the interesting things that I didn't realize is if you're completely submerged in water, you have resistance to fire.
Okay.
So like, and Jeremy was talking a little bit about how they put that at the end of the underwater chapter, and he's like, had I done that over again, I would not have put it there. So it creates an interesting thing to take into consideration. But I guess one of the things I kind of want to talk about today is what is our speculation of what they're going to do in 2019 with the nautical theme. So essentially, we know they generally they haven't been doing supplements as far as this is specifically for the dungeon master. Other than that stuff is usually all adventures. You have Mordenkainen's and Volo's to monsters, but they try and pack in a significant amount of player information.
Right.
So, it just makes me think that it's not going to be a supplement book, but it's going to be an adventure based around seafaring adventures.
I'm thinking we're probably going to see another like Tales of the Yawning Portal, but as opposed to it being like here's a bunch of small adventures, here's a bunch of small adventures, and the rules for everything you need to run, boat to boat combat and undersea adventures. I think that's the perfect place to put all of that. We might get some specific to underwater spells, underwater weapons, maybe some more underwater races. Not that we really need a whole lot. I mean, we already have the Triton, but we could get merfolk or sea elves or both.
Yeah, sea elves. Let's see. Do we have sea elves in official
We don't have an official. I think they talked about them in one of the Anarthakana, like the Elven sub races, if I remember correct. And I'm certain somebody out there is already saying whether I'm right or wrong.
You know what? I think they did do Sea Elves, and I think they put it in Mordecai's Tome of Foes, possibly. I mean, I'm looking it up on D&D Beyond right now, which is super useful. Which, by the time I look it up, someone is probably already like...
Jessica Brown says, yep, they are. They are official.
And they're Mordecai's Tome of Foes then. And that, it's kind of what I thought. So, we do have a bunch of races that are fully aquatic, and then we have races that, can hold their breath for a long time, like the lizard folk and the turtle, because we have Vidalcan. I'm not sure how you say those.
Vidalcan.
They're amphibious in Ravnica's Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. And also in that same book, you have Simic Hybrid, which definitely has some aquatic options as well.
Right.
So we're already seeing some things that we have to work with. And I imagine, they're going to come up with some other variants if they do a nautical themed book, because they do seem to like to try and, kind of like throw in enough player options that players want like all the books, which is from a business standpoint kind of smart.
Absolutely. But you were talking about that there were a handful of aquatic adventures.
Not many. There is not many.
But if they were to take those and again look at Tales from the Yawning Portal, and you run those kind of things through the 5e conversion factor, maybe they write a few more, they add in all of these water supplement stuff, again, new spells, new races. I think you could have a lot of fun with that book.
So 1981 they published The Sinister Secret of the Salt Marsh, which is actually there's three adventures. I believe it's that one, Danger at Dunwater, and The Final Enemy. Narrator Doug had pointed me to the final enemy. I saw in the chat earlier that other people were mentioning the others in the series. So, like, are they going to try and remake like a classic adventure from into 5e? They've had a lot of success with relying on nostalgia for 5e and bringing things, bringing that stuff back. Maybe they'll expand upon it. Maybe then they'll add more, more adventure stuff, more player options, everything you would probably need for running an adventure above or below the waves. If you look at even if you look at Tome of Annihilation, right, there was a lot of information in there for basically running a hex crawl, because that's kind of what that was.
Right.
So even when they just do an adventure, they're kind of putting these other stuff in there to expand the game.
Absolutely, and that makes the most sense given the logic of what they've already been doing with 5th edition.
So do you have a preference? If you could forget what they've been doing, if you had to pick, what kind of product would you like to see?
Well, for me, I mean, as you're well aware, we don't use the pre-published adventures. So for me, a complete another splat book where it's just from the player side, maybe dabble in some rules for the GM. To me that would be far better. To fill it with all of that stuff as opposed to adventures, but with what they're showing, what they've been doing, I don't see why they wouldn't put some small things in.
Yeah, so I'm kind of with you. Like, I love they did a series in AD&D where they did one for the Mind Flayers, they did one for Beholders, they did one for Sahagan called Sea Devils. All of those products were amazing. They went into such detail on their culture, their civilizations, their ecology. I love that kind of stuff, but I think we've moved away from that. Like, we're not going to see those kind of products anymore. Right. With you, I would also like to see that kind of stuff, because I rarely run pre-written adventures. I mean, if I run one a year, I'm like running a lot. So
was the Christmas adventure you ran for us, was that the first time you've done it?
That was I think it was the first one. It was the first one I ran for you guys. for certain. Like I've run some Nerdarchy products for fan games.
But that's a lot different, running something that you yourself put together.
That help, yeah.
That's a lot different than running something that somebody else wrote.
Yeah, so that being said, like, yeah, for the group that I've been running for the past 4 or 5 years, that was the only one I did. And that was because it was like a fun thing. It was a Christmas adventure.
Right.
Orcus Stole Christmas, I believe. You can find that over on Frog God Games. That was definitely a fun thing to run. But that being said, I feel like this is going to be another like adventure path book, like, and it's just going to be on the seas. Like there's no worlds or anything like that I can think of from the previous editions.
Well, I mean, doesn't Kryn have, the seafaring minotaur?
It does, but at the same time,
they're not really talking about Kryn, so why would they start
there with that kind of adventure? Yeah, it would be weird. It would be weird at the very least.
I mean, Forgotten Realms, at least, back when we were reading, the Drizzt novels, or Drizzt for, those of you out there who want to pronounce it the way others do, there was adventures that Drizzt was on the waves. I don't remember, was it, I don't
which book it was.
I don't remember which book or even which city he was out of.
Except from
Muskin?
But Threat from the Sea would be so much a better series to check out if you want, if you want nautical adventures and ideas.
Yeah, that was definitely a really good series to read.
Yeah, and introduced the Sahagin as a major threat, and it got into like their religion and their gods. And also, I forget what it's called, but there's like a Sahagin that gets born where they look like sea elves, and they kind of like use them as spies. By the time you think of it, they'll probably put it in the chat.
It's true. Now, is the Sahagin that we have in this edition, do they have the mutants, the ones with 4 arms?
Yeah, they call them, but they're like dukes or something.
Okay.
They're not mutants anymore. They're royalty. Or they're dukes or barons or something along that nature.
Yeah, because, I mean, I remember them in the earlier editions that they were, super badass. And, that would be a way, like, if we got a whole section of new monsters that were expansions upon some of the sea races that we already have. Totally, well, slightly off topic. My family every once in a while will play app games on our device, and one of the games is Hungry Shark Evolution, and you wind up playing aquatic creatures that go and eat a whole bunch of stuff. But some of the larger things in history are out there, and I've recently purchased online an ancient fish that I plan on putting as a mini. So if I ever have aquatic adventure, or if I find some way to have it flying through the air, I'll have a pretty cool mini that I can put on the board. It's terrifying.
I feel like over the years that's something that's been severely lacking from our games. I don't think we've done very much with, like, occasionally we have characters get on boats, but we have not done that much with like aquatic adventures.
I would agree. I mean, we've sailed the barge numerous times with Parak. I used the dragon turtle. I had you guys on a boat and attacked you with a Kraken. But I mean, it wasn't an aquatic adventure; it was an aquatic encounter.
Doug is butchering the hell out of how you say Sahagin in the chat. It's okay, Doug. We love you anyway.
How does he say we should pronounce it?
Sahagin. Sahagin.
No, thank you. I butcher many things, and I am one of those people that I don't care how other people pronounce things. I'm gonna say things the way I've got in my brain, and it takes a lot of work for me to wind up changing that. So, as previously mentioned, I say Drizzt. I will always say Drizzt until Ari Salvatore has a conversation with me directly and says, please, can you say it this way? I'll probably still say Drizzt.
Oh, we found the one person on the planet that knows how to say Tiefling, and it's Jessica Brown. We actually stopped. We kind of changed and course corrected during our videos to Tiefling, but we've always called them Tieflings. I don't know, because it's spelled that way mainly. And then everyone, I love it when people correct you on how to pronounce something. And they like spell it a completely different way. That's why I think the English language is garbage, and I'm just waiting for it to conform to me.
Well, I'm not going to argue with how many rule changes you have to make with the English language. But typically, when I comes before E, you say the I. So TIE is tie, just like a necktie. So if you add fling to the end of tie, why is it not tie fling?
Well, because I read all the comments. I've read like the dissertation of the Germanic origins and blah blah blah.
Well, I wouldn't say blah blah blah. I don't want to insult our fans.
Blah blah blah. Listen, I've read some pretty long comments, which we do appreciate when you commented on the videos. But some of them, some people will leave comments, and I'm like, this could have literally been like a blog article.
Wow.
Like they're so long.
Well, thank you for caring that much enough to write that much. But looking at what's there, I mean, yeah, the English language does kind of suck when it comes to spellings and rule exceptions and whatever have you. So yeah, we're not exactly young folks. We're gonna be sticklers on a bunch of different things. And
it's not even that. It's like I say shit, and as the words leave my mouth, I know they're wrong. Like I know that's not how you say it. But I've been saying it that long for the past 20 years, so I'm probably not going to get it.
Well, I mean, we did a video today, spoiler for you guys, talking about monks, and we brought up, Kai and Ki and what have you, and I've been saying it wrong for so long that pretty frequently I'm like, what's the correct way? And I've talked to martial arts, masters or martial arts students, and I'm like, oh, Kai this and Kai that. It's like, dude, it's Ki, and I'm like, but okay, why can it be Kai and Ki and Chi and Ki and with the Q as opposed to the K? And I'm like, that's a lot of work.
I think with the Q it's still pronounced Chi anyway.
Oh, with a Q it's Chi.
I think so. Well, though there is a Qigong, Qigong, no Qigong. I don't know. It's weird, but I don't know. When you start transferring like pictures into words, into the English language anyway, into letters.
So I don't mean to insult or say anything about any other cultures or any particular philosophies. I'm just saying that there's sometimes my brain and my tongue is just an idiot, and this is how it comes out. So I apologize, but I goof up.
You should apologize, Ted.
I apologize for all kinds of stuff. I mean,
and then Drizzt. The reason why we say Drizzt wrong is because in Homeland, the series anyway. I don't know if it's probably
in one of the books. Somebody specifically says, "What's a Drizzt?" And it's spelled out with phonetically with the dash and the whole thing. And it's like, look, there it is. It clearly states it's supposed to be a Drizzt, not a Drizzt.
And not only that, like the first person to hand me the books. It said Drizzt as well, and I think they probably said it as well because they read the books, and you read, you get to the Homeland series when he first comes to the surface in like the third book, and that scene happens, and it's like, oh, I guess that's how you say it.
Well, and I got the books from you, and you're like, oh, you should read the Drizzt books.
Well, yeah, like anybody that's been on these videos, Nate and Ted and Ryan. More than likely, everything they mispronounce, just blame me because they've been listening to me say it wrong for so long.
Well, however, to me, if you have to say, Drizzt, 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 or Drizzt, to me, Drizzt sounds like a cooler name. So I would rather say that or be that than any of the other options.
Doug, topic, subject, and meandering. Yeah, that happens from time to time.
That's Nerdarchy for you.
So I wonder, back to the aquatic idea. We had gone through, and there really, unless it's a beast, there are no monsters that are 100% aquatic. I wonder if in this product we will see some of that.
Well, I mean that's definitely an option. I mean, if we jump to the back of the monster manual, I'm certain that we get here we go. We got a reef shark. And it's one of the only things that I actually saw in here that says water breathing. The shark can only breathe water.
Yeah. Maybe an octopus, squid.
So like,
But I know why they do it. They do it because that stuff isn't particularly useful as often. So by creating a bunch of things where you could use them either or, you could fight them on the shore of an underdark lake, or you could fight them from a boat, or you can still straight up use them in an underwater adventure.
So we do have the octopus, and that does have the water breathing only.
Unless you want to use the Underdark version, the Rocktopus, which is out of the abyss. I love it. It's just a blurb somewhere. It's not like a full-on monster write-up. It's just they use it somewhere, and it is I think it's a non-aquatic octopus that is like clings to the ceiling and stuff, and it's in the Underdark.
That's awesome.
But it's just fun to say a Rocktopus.
I'll have to look that one up again, because every time that comes up, I find it comical and then forget about it. But you're 100% correct when it comes to the aquatic creatures. There is so much about being underwater. You're dealing with light sources, dealing with breathing, dealing with all of the combat rules. I know numerous times throughout the episodes of Critical Role, he's taken them underwater, and everything winds up being at disadvantage in melee attacks. Although I think there should be no issues with a spear underwater.
There isn't. There are certain weapons, basically piercing weapons, although it's not worded that way, and crossbows you can use underwater without a problem. The interesting thing about all ranged weapon underwater, I don't remember if crossbows falls into this as well, but after that first range increment, there's no range. So if you can use a bow underwater, or you can throw something underwater that, if it's not a spear, you only get that first range increment, and it's at disadvantage.
So, that is pretty interesting. And I look at that and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. But because you have all of these extra challenges that you have to wind up doing, some DMs are like, nah, I don't want to worry about that. But if you still want to use that monster, they've presented the options of, well, it can breathe air and water, so you could be on or near water and be able to have this thing be a threat. And to me, that winds up solving a lot of problems, even if it doesn't make sense.
I actually now I regret having not done more aquatic adventures. There was actually a part in the game I'm currently running that was a branch that we might have gone down, based off of some of the things that happened in the game. So the apparatus Kawash is a magic item that is kind of an underwater magic item, and there are a couple more that basically are as well. Nice. Jessica Brown had asked. There's the 3 artifact weapons, like it's Whelm, Wave, and I don't remember the name of the third one that is part of the Trinity, but Wave is absolutely something used for underwater. Is Trident a fish command is definitely a thing.
I don't know if it's in the current edition, but that was a thing.
It was a thing, but there's definitely a Trident that does something similar in this edition as well. Someone put in, there's the aquatic or the mariner's armor, which is a thing. And I'm sure if you kind of work your way through the books, you find some things. But the reason why I'm disappointed I haven't done more, it's like, what? That'd be a great way to run an adventure between 7th and 10th level, where you could literally use challenges that are actually aimed more towards 3rd and 5th level, because of the factors with traveling underwater and being underwater and doing that stuff. And not only that too, suppose your players are using breathe water spell or using magic items to breathe water, man, spell magic becomes a real bitch.
That is true.
That's a character killer right there, because especially if you're deep and you're gonna go you can't do they get a chance to hold their breath? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe they're just going right to suffocating. Maybe it's a Constitution saving throw to see if they hold their breath in time.
Right.
Or because you're extracting, depending on how breathe water works, because you're extracting the oxygen from the water, but doesn't that also mean your lungs are probably full of water anyway? So it's if you want it to be really evil, use a underwater, use a race that has spellcasters and use the Dispel Magic spell.
That could be pretty evil.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, that also depends upon what kind of lethality are you looking for in your games, which stems away from the aquatic option. And as I've said before, like I look at those unless there's a solution that could readily be available. Like I'm not looking to run that kind of game.
Well, it depends too. Like, how are your players breathing water? If it's because someone has the spell, then more than likely someone could probably recast it.
That is true.
Possibly. And, there might be other spells that they might have at their disposal. Hopefully they prepared their spell list according to, I'm going underwater and I might have some problems here.
Well, and that is the thing, like whether it's a planned adventure or a random happenstance, that, also enters into it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know what? I don't really see dropping characters to be that big of a deal. It'll create issues in the sense that, well, now someone has to get that person to the surface, get them someplace where they're not drowning and dying. And trying, part of that encounter will be then maybe rescuing one of the players.
That is true. That's certainly a way to look at it.
And why didn't your wizard counterspell that dispel magic? So I feel like there's definitely a lot of things you can do there.
Jessica's been quite happy in the chat today. So she's like, the Trident of Fish command was 3rd edition.
Yes. I'm surprised I haven't read. Well, maybe we'll get that in the nautical adventures. Also, Jessica is really easy to pick out because she @s us.
Yeah, that is true
as well. So remember, if you at Nerdarchy or put question in front of your question, all that is going to help us easier. So I know that early on someone did ask about theater of the mind or minis for underwater combat. And one of the one of the struggles for doing underwater combat is the fact 3 dimensions.
Well, I mean, we have our own silly solution for how to deal with heights. I know there are companies out there.
Step 1: eat a lot of pizza. A lot, I mean.
Or be silly and have collected the little pizza tables, as we call them, for a long time. But there are products out there that you can buy that have the platform that you can set, what their current elevation is as well.
I feel like a lot of pizza is a better way to go.
I personally like the eating a lot of pizza.
You get several of them. Like in every box, you have a range of, it could be 5 to 25 or 5 or 10 to 50 feet worth of height or depth as you go. And and we've been playing the Nerdarchy game for a while where we usually order pizza, so we have a ton of those things to use. Although I think we'd start eating through them a lot faster if it was an underwater adventure.
Yeah, but I'm pretty certain that I could field. We typically use them as 10 foots. 10 feet increments. If you changed it to 5 and you had like a 5-person party and 10 monsters and everybody's at different elevations, I think then it could be pretty taxing. But I mean, I've saved dozens of them, so like I'd have to pull out the stash. But I saved them because as I began, stacking them, I thought they looked like cool towers. So I'm like, well, maybe I could use this as some kind of spire. Maybe I could, do some kind of like gaming craft with them. And, in the beginning of Nerdarchy, I had, we weren't certain exactly, where the channel was going to go. A while ago, Nate and I had done, the Nerdcraft stuff. So it was, very up in the air. Well, I wound up saving them, and as I've got all kinds of craft supplies all over the place, that just got added to the mix. So
well, and then we started using them, so it kind of worked out. We use them for elevation, and they've been tables in our game. So
well, there's that as well.
A little bit high on the table side, but it worked. It did what it needed to do. Yeah. It takes up about a 10 by 10 area, so some large tables in a tavern.
That's true.
Worked out pretty good. How to D&D. Have you talked about using any of the monsters and reskinning them as sea creatures? Not yet, we haven't. Although I don't know if we've talked about that per se in videos, but we've done a lot of reskinning, with our Fast and Dirty Monster series and making things different. And it really is easy to just be like, oh, this thing now just has a swim speed and breathes underwater. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of the easiest fixes. Or even taking aquatic creatures that are solely aquatic, which as we mentioned, are very few. They tend to be fish or sharks and give them a fly speed and say they can breathe air, you know?
Which is, definitely the foremost option with that, that creature I was talking about, the Dunkleosteus.
The what?
It's an ancient, gigantic fish. I think it's called like a Dunkleosteus or something along those lines. I'm probably, as with everything else, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. But I saw a pretty cool one already came, painted, and it's sizable enough to be like, hey, that looks threatening.
I feel remiss we didn't mention the Warforged for aquatic adventures as well. I mean, they don't really need to breathe, so
that's true.
So they're in.
I think in one of the games, like the Warforged got pushed off a boat, and it just walked to the surface.
Yeah, in one of our games,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
it walked along the bottom until it got to the surface. Because I feel like, especially the heavier armor options, I don't know that you're swimming. I feel like in 5e, even with the lightest of options, you're probably looking at disadvantage to your athletics check.
Yeah, I would imagine so. So like you could do a lot of stuff. I know in our world, at Warforged, we've kind of renamed the Forged because they weren't really made for war; they were made for other stuff. And in the Underdark, like they're the ones that actually go out into the water to try and salvage stuff. So it's definitely a lot of fun there, and that would be a great game to run as well. If you're playing an aquatic, race or playing an aquatic game that's all about underwater salvage, dealing with the critters that are down there and retrieving the things from sunken ships.
So, Mr. X, D&D underwater quest idea. Super glued quarter on the bottom of a pool. I mean, it would be a gold piece, I think, but yeah, your players would be at it for a while trying to get it, or make a fake gem or something. Make it a cubic zirconian diamond. It's a diamond and it's big. If no one tries appraising it while it's down there, I can see players being at it for a while. It's a mimic. Aquatic mimics.
But I mean, adding a whole bunch of aquatic monsters would be awesome, and would definitely give GMs the ability to incentivize them to be like, oh well, you want to use these, you got to go underwater to do so.
The question: you drink underwater to breathe water? Oh, you drink, but you breathe it in.
So James says, just speculating, but if the next adventure is aquatic, tie to the Sky King's thunder, that Kraken is nasty. So, I mean, I don't know. Actually, I said Sky King again, didn't I? Storm King's thunder.
You're gonna have to write that adventure now.
That's so much.
Keep talking about it.
That's so much work.
Get on that.
They actually made a season 2 for that, and the kids have been watching it because it's about frogs, and well,
your daughter is obsessed with frogs.
But Storm King's Thunder apparently has a Kraken in it. So if they linked it somehow to that, that could be an interesting tie-in.
There's a malformed Kraken too in Tales from the Yawning Portal. So it's like a Kraken. It's like Kraken Light.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I imagine it's going to be another adventure, and it's going to be like they've been doing. This adventure will take you through 10 levels of play or so, and then they'll incorporate a bunch of the options. So, which it might be a great book for as a resource as far as running underwater games. Like Out of the Abyss is an awesome book. Even if you don't want to run it, because one, it's got all the demon lords in it, and what's not to love about that? But then it also has tons of stuff for running games in the Underdark that you could use. I know when we were doing a game, I had actually used that book for that resource alone, just because it had all kinds of different hazards and things that you could find in the Underdark.
Well, I mean, I absolutely needed Out of the Abyss for the conclusion of my game. Because I'm certain that I've talked about it, and you guys out there, already know that they were fighting Narcitus, who is supposed to be a really powerful demon lord, And if I don't have something to compare it to, then obviously I'm just spitballing, and I don't know how close I'm going to get. So obviously my Narcissus was more powerful than the others because, I had very powerful players who not only were, you guys were tactically built together. Maybe by regular standards, you might have been, on par or lower level than, what your magic items, had. But in comparison to like the game that you're running, you guys had much more magic items in my game than what we have in yours.
You guys are magic poppers.
Well, it's true. I mean, I don't have.
Hey man, Ryan's Dragonborn has a dress of the Archmagi.
Yeah, I think my character's wearing a pair of earrings that are like representative of Pearl of Power or something.
Oh yeah. A lot of cross-dressing going on in that game, but it's for magic.
Hey, that extra third level spell slot could be a Revivify, so it's needed.
Nice. These earrings saved my life.
I'll save somebody else's. But with that, like, you guys were powerful, so I needed to create something that was a credible threat. So I put something that was like a challenge 25, 26, I think, somewhere in that vein, because I needed to properly challenge you guys. And given by the way the encounter went, I think it was a rock solid encounter. I don't think there was a like, oh my god, we're all gonna die at a moment's notice. But I mean, it was a challenge.
So M14SRV Dory character, gods no. By Odin's beard, I deny that.
I was trying to ignore that comment.
Yeah.
As much as I like a lot of the animated stuff, Disney, Pixar, I would rather Dory never have existed. That's.
You want a Thanos snap, Dory?
Pretty much, and I'm certain that gets, I'll get a lot of hate from people out there for saying that, but she was the worst thing. I don't even, what was the
Finding Nemo?
Finding Nemo, worst part about that movie, and I had no desire to watch Finding Dory. The rest of the family saw it. I'm like, nope. Not gonna do it.
I refute you. I rebuke you. Mike St. Jacques? I'm probably butchering that. Do you think cannons will be allowed in 5e? Man, I almost feel like if you do a nautical themed book, it's got to be in there to some degree or another. I don't know if it'll be a sidebar or if it'll be a core part of it, but it's like when you get into like the pirate stuff and swashbuckling, I don't know, pistols and black powder are just a lot of fun.
Great movie that you can really, take some serious inspiration, Master and Commander. And, when you see, the ship-to-ship combat in that movie, it is supremely awesome. My wife absolutely loves that movie. And we've watched it, numerous times. And just the sheer damage that cannons can do, is crazy. If you watch Mythbusters, they did a whole thing about people dying from the shrapnel, and it doesn't really look like shrapnel's going to cause any issues. So like you could really have the cannons that aren't really affecting the people, but just the ship and all the detriments that you can wind up going with in that way. And I think that would still allow for a really great encounter or concept.
Just looking at some of the comments. I'm way behind. I was up further up towards the top. But yeah, so I would like to. Someone pointed out as well that they are in the DMG, so there is some of that going on. But I just feel like if they do a nautical adventure, that it's going to be in there somewhere. And almost feels like it has to.
And it would have to be like a variety of different pound shots, not just this is a cannon.
Maybe. I don't know. 5e is pretty simplistic, so I don't know how deep they'll go.
No, that's the way I would go. I would give a couple ranges, with varying gold costs, and just putting like your a stat chart, just like here's your ship weapons. I know in Critical Role they had airships and they had catapults on their ships. They had some cannons and there was a variety of different options. So depending upon what kind of vessel you're talking about, should determine what type of artillery or weapons you could equip it with. Are you going to go with catapults? Are you going to go with some kind of ballista? Are you going to go strictly with cannons and black powder? You could have a lot of options. If you decide to put forth the effort in that direction.
So, Mitch, quick question. I want to eventually throw a Kraken at my players, but with a ship I designed with cannons and players calculated damage, and they would probably one-shot it. What should I do? Well, for one, I don't know. I don't know what cannons you're using, but I'm fairly certain the ones in the DMG are not one-shotting a Kraken. The other thing to take into consideration, generally the way cannons are on a boat, they're on either side. The chances that you'll be able to bring all the cannons to bear aren't particularly good. Now, shooting cannons into the water would probably get you around the disadvantage for the shots. And, probably, if I were to have that happen, one, they wouldn't get their proficiency bonus, right? If they're not
proficient and
they're not proficient. So is that, and the Kraken's got 400 hit points or something.
472 hit points. It's a challenge 23. It has a 22 intelligence and an 18 wisdom. This thing has got the ability to seriously understand if it's going to attack a boat for a reason. It's probably going to do some damage to the ship before they've got the ability to respond. So therefore, it can disable a certain number of cannons, and you're the DM. You don't need to roll this stuff. You just narrate it and allow the initiative to start after your narration.
Yeah, they get a surprise round, coming up from underneath. They grab 4 cannons the first round and just rip them off the ship, so there would be less, or maybe they attack the bottom. And they also have control weather, right? So you could be going into this with a ship that's on, crazy waves, and there could be obscurement. So in those ways, they may absolutely have disadvantage firing those cannons, in addition to, not being proficient with the cannons. So they might also be better off doing other stuff, and maybe letting the crew handle the weapons that they've been trained to use.
Right. So they don't have control weather, but they do have lightning storm.
Okay.
So it could start off doing, 3 bolts of lightning that do 4d10 points of damage before anything is going on. So it's oh no, a storm is coming in, and they don't understand why. Then the Kraken comes up and begins damaging the ship. It's a siege monster, so it's doing double damage to objects and structures. And it hits for tentacles, hit for 3d6 plus 10. So it's 6d6 plus 10 to objects. I'm sorry, those cannons are not going to be lasting very long.
Yeah, and it might use minions to soften you up first as well. Let them go crazy with the cannons, and for the first round or two, and feel good about it, but then then it actually shows up.
So a big thank you to Mike G for the super chat. You were awesome.
Greatly appreciated.
Not a question, just a thank you for you guys, the channel content, and interacting with us. Well, we are more than happy to do so. Yeah, it's one of those things that we enjoy, getting in these chats and having these conversations. And if it's just Dave and I, it's not as much fun as all of us talking together.
Oh, so interestingly enough, a cannon just has an attack value +6, so they're not going to get any better than that, and it does 8d10 bludgeoning damage. So it does actually more damage than I initially thought, with an average of 44. Yeah, I guess if you're saying all the cannons hit, and you have 10 cannons on one side, yes, that in theory could kill the Kraken, but yeah. A +6. What is their armor class?
Armor class of 18.
Okay, so they got to get 12 or better to hit. And I'm sure, like I said, it's going to do things in order to mitigate the damage. Do they have any resistances? I don't have Kraken memorized, folks.
Damage immunities, lightning, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. So
those non-magical cannonballs are going to be bouncing off of it.
it's immune to frightened and paralyzed. So no resistances, but it's gonna be immune to the cannons.
Man, I can't. I thought they had some spell casting, man. They don't, huh? For some reason, I mean, unless it was like an earlier edition, but I could have sworn that they have regional effects, and their lair actions. Maybe there's something in there. I could have sworn they had the ability to control elementals.
Well, they definitely have affiliation with sharks. I remember reading that when I used the Kraken on you guys.
Yeah, they can just like house aquatic creatures within 6 miles. Water elementals collapse within 6 miles of the lair. These elementals can't leave the water and have it. So there's water elementals, like you could lead with those, and start. Oh, Kraken can alter the weather at will in a 6 mile radius centered on its lair. The effect is identical to the control weather spell.
Oh, there you go.
So I was like, I'm pretty sure they can control weather somehow. So yeah, and those I don't think those cannons are going to be a huge advantage on the Kraken. And again, I would, one of Ted's favorite tactics is use waves of monsters. I would definitely use that first.
Yeah.
Krakens are badasses. I think what you threw one at us. There was only 4 of us that night, I think.
There was only 4, and third or fourth round in, I kind of changed I'm like, I'm gonna kill these guys, or I'm gonna kill some of them, and I did not want to have a plot, stop because of this encounter. So like, it went into a negotiation, and I'm like, all right, tell me why I shouldn't just kill you. And it was like, it went into a cool conversation. The bard wound up rolling an obnoxious persuasion roll, and I'm like, all right, I as Ted the DM, think an obnoxious roll and a small reward. Well, maybe we'll see where that winds up going. And it was amusing because I didn't want to stop the plot. I mean, I could have just been like, all right, I'm gonna kill whoever's here. People were going to die. Some of them would have teleported away, and then I would have had to piece the campaign back together while 2 players were making brand new characters.
Yeah, I found the annoying part for my character was I was like, oh, this should not be a huge problem that it could turn. It would be because of the spells I've selected, and because I don't have a lot of my spell book. I was like, I need fly at the very least.
So, Jessica wanted to know what a packed weapon damage to Kraken. I think at a certain level, the packed weapon is considered magical, but up until that point, no.
But it's early. It's like 5th level.
Okay.
It's considered magic.
So at that point in time, then yes, because it's a magic weapon. Even if it doesn't confer a plus, it's still a magic weapon. So
there's some good puns in here going on, Ted. Right up your alley.
Fish golem, awesome, Doug.
How to D&D. You kill the Kraken, but 24 hours that comes back as a zombie Kraken. Deal with that party. Although a zombie Kraken is probably a lot easier to deal with than a actual Kraken.
I would love to see the stats on a zombie Kraken. I think that'd be fun to do.
So in the DMG, there's that little thing where it can turn. There's a chart for turning different monsters into different races or species, and zombies is one of them. So it would basically make it uglier, less charismatic, stupider, and give it. And then it would also have the undead fortitude, which would be the big thing. But I guess it doesn't really lose any of its other abilities. I mean, what's the Kraken's intelligence?
22.
Right, so it's still pretty freaking smart after you minus 6 from its intelligence.
Yeah, that's still a 16.
So never mind. And some of the physical stats will go up a little bit, like strength and
strength is already a 30, con of a 25.
Yeah, so we would actually gain another hit point per hit die minimum.
Well, that's another 27.
And what is this? And the saving throw is kind of good. Oh my god, it is a good saving throw. So you're looking at minimal plus 15 for the saving throw for that undead fortitude for dropping things from damage after.
So I would then want to. Now I've got this whole idea behind the zombie Kraken that's got zombie sharks that go along with it. I think that'd be a whole cool underwater undead nexus. I think it's got to be a thing now.
Jessica Brown, I will stat it out for you if you want. So yeah, the zombie Kraken would be freaking a nightmare. A lot of fun, and I also do like the theme. We should do a video on and do something along those lines where we create like an adventure thing and then turn it into a download at some point or a Patreon reward, because I don't think we have anything aquatic. I mean, we just released something Arctic. I know we've done like oases, and we've talked about some. We've done some aquatic things, but not like fully fleshed out.
Yeah, we could definitely go down that road. Maybe we'll come up with some options and then throw a poll up on Patreon. See what they want to see us do.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of sucks is like when we do videos on things that are like more that we find more interesting and more creative, they tend to tank on YouTube. Like if we don't do videos on like the worst this or the best that, or maybe like character build guides, it's like it seems like none of you guys care.
Jessica's apparently serious about statting up the zombie Kraken. Anything you guys ever want to send our way, nerdarchy@gmail.com is always a great way to communicate with us.
Oh man, if you're doing zombie Krakens and zombie sharks, you might as well throw in some zombie Sahagins just because. Or if they're zombies, then they become Sahagins then.
So to me, I think there would have to be some kind of undead mastermind behind all of this. Is it the Kraken? Is it one of the Sahagin? Is it some other kind of necromancer that's trying to corrupt the ocean with with undeath? I think that'd be a pretty interesting take on things.
Tyler says nautical artificer would be fun. Hey, they're doing February. They're coming out and doing the artificer again. So we'll definitely have to check that out. We'll probably talk about it in a live chat instead of doing a video on it, because it's just really hard to get them out timely the way we do things. Because it would have to come out, we'd have to read it, and then the week it came out, we would then shoot. We would then shoot the video that Saturday. Then that week it would go out to our editors.
Best case scenario, if it came out Monday, we would be able to release it the
next
following Friday.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're talking about a 11-day wait versus a 5-day wait.
Yeah, 4 or 5 days. So it's probably the best way we do it. We can kind of discuss it here live with you folks. So, do we have anything on the agenda that we have to mention?
No, I mean we're in week 2, so we could have talked about this off air and figure out what we're gonna give away next month, but we can always push that to next week. We've kind of shuffled some things around, so there's not as much as necessary to do, at these live chats.
Yeah. So. My game is coming up at the end of the month. I'll be running it on a Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And I think I've got one person so far. So I'll have to look and see what the RSVP date is that I gave. So I will probably be sending out a message to the patrons real soon going, hey, I need another 4 or 5 players. First come, first serve. So if you're a patron, you can keep your eyes open for that.
Yeah, it was interesting. Months ago, I ran a game. I had one person, if at all, respond to the initial list. I sent it out, got players, and when it came time for the game, the two people that I had gamed with previously who came in, which was Eli and Fragonator, like there's only two to show up, so we just kind of like chatted and talked to D&D for a couple hours. Because it's like, well, we didn't have enough players to game, and we weren't doing this as a streamed thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, we just kind of chatted and hung out, and it was a blast. But it was like, two players is rough to do as a game when you come prepared for 4 or 5.
That's funny. You stream offline. Yes, we've been doing our fan games where we just do them without streaming them live, so that it's just us and the fans playing some D&D. So it's more relaxed and easier for the fans, we feel like. They don't have to worry about people watching them. And then also we're not really putting live plays up on the channel at this point. If we put them anywhere, it'll be a new channel. Because we want to keep that separated. So if you do want to get involved in one of the live games, then absolutely you don't have to worry about it being streamed. You don't have to worry about whether or not you're performing for an audience or anything like that. So some nerds playing D&D over the internet.
So for the time being, we're looking to pull the plug on that. We at some point in time are going to get the secondary live play channel up. And then games will go there, and we'll make the determination as to the fan games, whether we want to put them up on there, give players some more, the fans the option of watching those or not. So
yeah, there's definitely some things we're trying to figure out at this point, and also too we've been discussing doing Nerdarchy games with some of the patrons, like a weekly regular game. So if people are interested in that, you can let us know. Just email us nerdarchy@gmail.com if that's something you'd be interested in. Obviously, it's going to be a higher level patron level. Probably $100 a month for a weekly game per person.
You'd pay the once, and then you'd game every single week. We'd be each looking to eventually run one game. So obviously there would be a limited slots of 8 to 10 of those. It would have to be at a time frame that works for our schedules, because like the last thing we'd want for you to do is like, oh, I paid for a game and I can't play in it because I work that night, or I'm just not available because of X reason.
Yeah, like as our games are wrapping up, yours is wrapped up, mine's gonna be wrapping up, and we're kind of discussing like, well, we could like start new games, or we could start new games and do it with the fans. So that's some of the things that we've been talking about behind the scenes and looking at. So if there seems like there's a lot of interest, definitely we'll get involved.
So please, if there's any interest in that kind of thing, please, as Dave says, nerdarchy@gmail.com, and share whether there's any interest in that.
Yeah. How did D&D question? Would game session be better on Twitch TV? It is, but so I guess a lot of you probably don't even care about this stuff, but like from a business aspect, like the idea of running games over and over again as a way of making income is terrible. Like, I don't want the life that I see a lot of streamers have. I love this hobby and I love this game, but I literally do not want to be playing multiple games a day every day. I want to do other things too. Like I don't even know how they do it. When I find myself in a bunch of different games, I start having trouble keeping track of all my characters. And by a bunch, I mean like 3. So
I have activities. I have a family. I have a job. I love D&D, but I don't think I could play every single week, 4 and 5 games a day, or 4 and 5 games a week, whereas I know there's some streamers out there that they do 8, 9 games a week, and that's what they do. And I'm like, hey,
every week or more.
If that's what you want to do, great. Enjoy it. Have fun. That is not for me.
I know, like we both had those weeks where it's like, oh, I've got 9 games in 8 days, or
I've never had 9 games in 8 days.
Or I might have done like 8 games in 9 days or something like that, and it was a lot and it was fun. But would I want to do that all the time? No.
I know I've gamed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday before, and that was exhausting for me.
And it's you also like in your case, you're working a full-time job, you got 2 kids, you got a wife, your kids are younger, and so you have all these other responsibilities. That becomes hard. Like I look at Twitch and to me it just looks like a hamster wheel that you can never get off of. Like we like YouTube because we can make videos on our time and then put them up, and then you guys can enjoy them at your leisure. It's so much easier. It's a better model in my opinion.
So Doug says there are people who play 8 to 9 a day, man.
Yeah, that's nuts.
How do you do, like, are you doing like 1 hour sessions?
I wouldn't know
2
which
hours?
character was which, especially like if you're doing voices and you're playing at kind of a higher level and you're really investing in your characters. And I feel like a lot of the Twitch streamers are very like touchy-feely when it comes to their games and stuff. That's not really me per se, but like I couldn't imagine being like that emotionally vested for that long. I'd be in a straitjacket. I wouldn't be able, I'd have a breakdown. I wouldn't be able to take it.
Like I remember, back before Nerdarchy, we ran, every week, one GM ran until the story was done or until that person stopped running. But moving into the model of once a month, it's a little bit harder to remember all the things that happened the last time you played, especially if, you miss a month or if the whole game doesn't happen for a month. Now it's 2 months since you played. Oh my God, what happened? But at the same time, you're able to do more because multiple GMs are running. And I've really enjoyed, that philosophy. I just started Jake's game Thursday night over on Mini Terrain Domain, and as soon as he gets that to YouTube, I'll begin putting it in the link down below for any of you that want to head over there and watch me play my somewhat crazy dwarf barbarian who sees spirits. It's fun.
Like I would say, like we've always played in probably 3 to 6 games a month, right? But they don't all happen every week, and for that was kind of like the sweet spot I feel like for us, for getting in gaming, and and not like burning out. Like we've always had to deal with gamer burnout in our games, and the DM not want to run anymore. Changing things up has made it so much easier. We're slightly past time now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to shut this down and we're going to go over to Patreon and do the after show. If you're a patron at the $3 tier or higher, go log in and look for the post. It'll be up in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And then like 5 to 10 minutes after that, we will get streaming again. We got some questions to answer. If you're not a patron, you can always go over there and sign up at the $3 level. And, those posts will become available to you. But we're going to be jetting out of here, setting up the next one. And we'll be taking more questions. We have some GM 911s to field. And if people ask questions there, we'll be able to get them. We actually end up getting into more questions in the after show than we do during the live chat because of because us coming in with topics. The topics take up more time.
Absolutely.
Depending where we meander to as well. But thanks for everyone for hanging out with us, and until next time,
Stay nerdy.